What's up everyone? Welcome back to another video. On the channel I previously built an original Game Boy and the Game Boy Color, but in this one we're going to build the ultimate Game Boy Advance. It's going to have it all. A beautiful Pokemon theme shell, a gorgeous backlit IPS screen, a rechargeable battery that uses USB Type-C, and last but certainly not least, an audio amp that will increase the maximum volume to levels previously unattainable. The amp requires some soldering, but I'm writing this script after the fact, and spoiler alert, it's loud. So, I think it was well worth the extra time it took to install the upgrade. All of the new parts shown in this video were purchased from handheldlegend.com. Usually the first place I go for projects like this, so I highly recommend them. Not sponsored by the way, I just really like the parts they offer, and shipping is usually pretty fast. But with all that being said, let's get started. First, we need to take the old GBA I got off eBay and liberate the primary circuit board. That's the only piece we need, since everything else we're using is brand new. This part is relatively easy, but the only issue you may run into is needing a tri-wing screwdriver to remove the outer shell. But luckily, my iFixer toolkit has what we need. Once everything is unscrewed and the circuit board removed, we can throw aside the remains of the old GBA and start the upgrade. But before we get ahead of ourselves, I recommend cleaning the board with some isopropyl alcohol. This board was in pretty good shape. If you have one with a lot of dirt and grime, this is the time to give it a good scrub. In hindsight, I probably should have checked to make sure this old Game Boy actually worked before taking it apart. But I like to live dangerously. After the board is all cleaned up, we're ready for the hardest part of this mod, installing the new amp, as well as the Dehiss kit, which is supposed to remove the hum and hiss sounds introduced by the new amplifier. So if you're going to do this particular upgrade, I recommend installing both parts. Luckily, it's easier than the amp I installed in the original Game Boy mod, which required running wires all over the place. For this one, you have to position the provided circuit boards appropriately and solder the contact points to the main board. Then solder the speaker to the amp. If you think it looks easy, well, you overestimate my soldering skills. This part took me longer than I should have, so I'm not going to bore you with the whole process. But once everything is attached correctly, we're ready to prepare the shell. I started by adhering the new glass screen lands to the front. Then you just have to stick the provided adhesive around the inside edge to hold the new screen in place. The kit also comes with a couple spacers to keep the screen straight and in its desired position. The skinny one goes to the left of the screen, while the thicker one should be placed below. The screen can then be positioned securely into the shell. Normally, you should verify the screen works before sticking it in place, but who has time for that? Not like skipping that one step is going to come back and bite me or anything. Anyway, next we'll need to attach the provided circuit board to the new screen through the connection on the bottom right. I discovered that this step is way easier if you make the connection prior to putting the screen in the shell. There is limited room to work with after everything is taped down, and this made attaching the cable extremely difficult. However, we're eventually able to make what appears to be a solid connection. I also recommend using a piece of adhesive to secure this board to the back of the screen. Then taking the included insulating film and placing it on top of the board to protect it from shorting out. Now, we just have to attach the two capacitive touch sensors. These are pre-soldered to the board, and after peeling off the paper from one side, you can stick them to the interior of the shell, one towards the top and the other towards the bottom. This will allow for brightness control and swapping between various color palettes, simply by tapping the outside of the shell in the locations where we stuck these pads. Once we get everything functional again, we'll be able to test it out. After the screen is secure, we then need to hook up the included ribbon cable. The kit comes with two options, and the one you use will depend on your GBA motherboard. If your board has a 32-pin connection, then you'll need to use that ribbon cable. But if you have a 40-pin connection, then you need to use the cable where one end is slightly wider. My board is a 40-pin, so that's the ribbon cable we're going with. We put one end of the cable into the display board, and after making sure the connection is secure, we're ready to connect it to the GBA's main circuit board and screw everything back together. Oh, and make sure you put all of the buttons and membranes back into the system before screwing down the main board. Not that I would ever make such a silly mistake. I would have to be a complete but once that's all done, you should be able to fold down the ribbon cable and attach it to the main board, making sure the clips are fully depressed to secure the cable. You may find it easier to attach this cable before screwing the board down, as it can be a little tight to get it maneuvered into place. After everything is hooked up, we should be good to put the right and left triggers back into their respective places, as well as the side pieces of plastic that slot into the shell below the triggers. Plus, the power switch can also be dropped into its slot. Next, we're ready to attach the back half of the shell. Things should line up pretty well, and then we can secure it all together. If you've got a new shell which came with screws, I recommend using those. Once everything is back together, it's pretty easy to drop in the Rechargeable Battery Mod. The battery cable just needs to attach to the charging board, and then the whole thing can be placed into the battery compartment, making sure the right two battery terminals are getting proper contact. Lastly, we put on the battery cover, which has a pre-cut hole to allow for easy charging. The one I ended up buying was a slightly different shade of yellow, but luckily I had another one lying around, which matched up way better. But now there is only one thing left to do, since everything should be ready to go. As our anticipation builds, we insert a copy of Pokemon Emerald, ready to see the gorgeous gaming grandeur that awaits us. So, with bated breath, we slide the power switch from off to on, fully ready to be amazed. And nothing happens. But all hope isn't lost. There appears to be signs of life. The game seemed to be functional, but the display just isn't displaying. Unfortunately, I'm not sure if the screen was already broken or if I broke it. But off camera, I tried to reconnect everything and it just refused to work. So, I guess that means we'll have to order a new one. I'll see you in a few seconds once that arrives.
3 days later.
And we're back. The new screen has arrived, plus this fancy new work mat. But this time I chose to make sure the screen turned on before putting it into the shell. And would you look at that? It works. So now all we have to do is place the new screen in the shell, wire everything back up, screw it all together, and we should be good to test it out properly. Ta-da! It looks amazing. And wow, is it loud. That amplifier I soldered to the board appears to be doing its job. At the end of the video, I'll put in some footage with the sound all the way up to hopefully give you an idea of how good it works and how loud it truly is. And as you can see, tapping the top or bottom of the shell allows you to adjust the brightness and swap between a few different color palettes. So that works as expected. Overall, I think this is the best Game Boy I've ever built. The hardest part was the soldering, but if you want to skip that part, it would still work great without the audio amp. And even though we had an issue with the display not working, in the end it all came together great. But I think I'm going to wrap things up for now. If you enjoyed yourself, be sure to hit that like button, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. I recently passed 900 subscribers, and I plan on doing a giveaway when I hit 1000. For that, I'm considering doing another Game Boy build and giving it away. It will probably be a Game Boy Color, since I have some of those parts already. But I thought that would be an awesome and fun giveaway for such a momentous milestone. Well, I hope you'll have a wonderful rest of your day. Stay safe out there, and as I promised, here's a demonstration of the impressive sound this Game Boy Advance is capable of. Bye.